Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Ocean Waves, or I Can Hear the Sea, from 1993. This continues my quest to review all of the films of Studio Ghibli, and this is their only TV movie. Ocean Waves was meant to be a production made by the younger animators at Studio Ghibli in their 20s and 30s, and it had been a long idea of Takahata and Miyazaki and the upper management in Studio Ghibli to develop the other younger animators. I'm assuming that might have had something to do with how Takahata and Miyazaki came up and how they wanted to be able to do more of their original ideas. They wanted to show that olive branch to the younger animators. They wanted this to be a very cheaply made movie, under budget and under schedule, and then release it maybe on TV or something. And unfortunately, this film went way over budget and way over schedule. Ended up, I think, being more of a hassle because they really didn't do this sort of thing again, unfortunately. It was directed by, at the time, a 34-year-old television director, Tamami Masazuki. He's probably more well known for directing Ranma at the time. Ocean Waves fits right into kind of the usual Studio Ghibli wheelhouse. The storytelling's not as perfectly crafted as something with Hayao Miyazaki or Isao Takahata, and it's actually the first Studio Ghibli film not directed by either of those two guys. After Kiki's Delivery Service, they're really becoming more of a studio, and this was the sort of thing they wanted to do. A young boy, Taku, who's about to go back for his 10-year high school reunion, and he remembers back to when he was in high school, from the beginning of high school towards the end of it, which kind of plays like Only Yesterday, but not exactly, because it doesn't really cut between the present, or at the time what was considered the present, the past, as much as Only Yesterday does. It really doesn't switch back that much as Only Yesterday, but it is very similar to Only Yesterday. And he remembers his time, especially falling in love with Reiku Muto. I think I'm butchering everybody's names. He was in love with this girl who had moved from Tokyo after her parents had divorced, and her mom took this girl and her brother to this smaller town in Kochi, Japan, where this high school is. And Taku and his friend Yutataka, who is also in love with this girl, actually shows and introduces Taku to her. Him and his friend, who are kind of fighting over her affections through a lot of it. It's not a major plot point. They kind of get over it. Taku gets kind of involved with the girl because she doesn't have money when they're on a class trip to Hawaii. Then she ignores him. Then they go to Tokyo together after she decides to fly to Tokyo spontaneously, and he goes there and meets her father, and that trip's a disaster. And it kind of goes through their high school drama and the complex and often melodramatic nature that teenagers have throughout their high school years, and especially a character like Raiku, who's a very complex, socially awkward girl who doesn't really fit into the new town that she's been forced into by her mother, and is kind of a loner. But despite that, Taku is still very much in love with her and keeps every now and then getting back involved and going on a crazy adventure with her, as he remembers this on his flight to his 10-year high school reunion, because he thought he saw her on the other side of a subway platform right before he left. This is based on a novel the same name. I'm not a huge fan of the kind of high school drama, even when I was in high school, and less so now. I kind of dislike it for that reason, but I can't help but acknowledge that it was incredibly realistic, as crazy as high school kids are, their mood swings, the crazy things they say, and the things that you remember from that time. Sometimes when I was watching it, it was like kind of almost too real. A lot of people really hate the girl that he falls in love with, and most guys apparently really hate her. They're like, you're gonna hate that character. I don't know if I hate her as a character. I think as a character she was actually really interesting and complex and felt like a real teenage girl to me. It felt like teenage girls I dated and knew. It did feel like very random, and suddenly there'd be a major crisis, and then, you know, you'd have to deal with that for the whole year. She felt very real to me in that regard. It's interesting seeing a different culture's version of a high school movie. I like how this centers around his relationship with her and his relationship with his friend, and it's really through his perspective, much like how in Only Yesterday was. Through this, he's really just thinking about his friendships, because he is going back for his high school reunion, and he's thinking about really his relationships and how he sees the people. And I found that to be interesting and well shaped, and it does have kind of a slice of life drama setting to it that felt very like kind of Takahata-ish. To my understanding, Studio Ghibli itself doesn't really love the film. They never released it in America. It seems to have weird releases every other place. No one's really sure exactly what the title is, because usually Studio Ghibli gives a de facto American or English title for all their other films, and this film has two titles, Ocean Waves and I Can Hear the Sea. It is probably the lesser known of the films released under the Studio Ghibli banner. It's actually stronger than you think it is while you're watching it in some places. It does kind of hit you at the end harder than you'd expect, because not only was it made close to Only Yesterday, it shares so many similarities to that. And I'm not harping on that because that was the last Studio Ghibli film I saw, also because it is kind of similar. Instead of her being younger in that film, he's a lot older and in high school, and it does capture that just the way Only Yesterday did. But I think one of the things that Only Yesterday did a lot better than Ocean Waves is that was a slice of life film that highlighted the animation a lot more, and this doesn't really do that at all, because the high school character designs are almost the same as the character designs in the present day or present day at the time. Viewing wise, it's not really as pleasant to watch, but that's really not fair to say, because Takahata is like one of the greatest animation directors of all time, and this guy, you know, he certainly was really good and directed some good Ranma episodes, but I don't think he was, you know, up to that. I don't see many TV movies that are this deep, especially in the 90s. If you think of the kind of TV movies America was making in this time in the 90s, they were a lot more sensational. They weren't this thoughtful and introspective. So if you place it more like kind of in the genre of what it's doing, it's pretty fucking remarkable, actually. If you're a Studio Ghibli film, you have a great shadow over you, and that's unfortunate. So if you look at it in the filmography, yeah, it's not as good. But as a TV movie by itself, I actually quite liked it. I think I liked it more than From Up on Poppy Hill, because it's a lot more thoughtful and introspective, and it made me think about my life in high school and how melodramatic and silly that was. It kind of shows it warts and all, and when you show high school life warts and all, that's not necessarily going to look as well structured as a John Hughes movie. The characters are going to look more messy and annoying and bitchy and stupid and frustrating, and I think Ocean Waves captures that better than I've seen a lot of films about teenagers. If you're going to present that to people and present your characters as so flawed, I feel like a lot of people aren't as into that. They romanticize high school life, and the characters in this weren't the kind of characters who would do that, particularly when he goes to Tokyo with her. That scene felt right out of high school to me, the awkwardness, doing all this stuff for this girl who like doesn't really know how to act around this guy who she's sharing a hotel room with, even though he's sleeping in the bathtub, for fuck's sake. She's sleeping on the bed, and he was like nice enough to bring her to Tokyo, but he didn't really have to. There's a lot of things that like when you're older, you'd be like, oh, I know how to do this. I don't care. That's what I'm gonna do. When you're a teenager, it's like, oh my god, this is all encompassing because my world is very small. And they address that a lot in this film, even head on. It does show how your growing attitude towards those teenage years as you get older, as you look back at your 10-year high school reunion, which I never went to, so I guess this film kind of facilitated that little nostalgia trip for me, at least. If anything, Ocean Waves kind of normaled me out in the way that most people get to, but I never experienced. So if you think of it as a film, like a throwaway, obscure Ghibli film, it probably deserves a better reputation and release, but so does Only Yesterday. Apparently, the same company that releases Only Yesterday has released this film in Europe, but not in America, and hasn't given it the decent release it probably deserves. Does it live up to other Studio Ghibli films? No, but it was never really meant to. From the onset, from the conception, it was meant to show off what younger animators could do. And sure, the character designs aren't as good, and the animation's more stilted, and the storytelling's not as refined, but those people weren't working on it. They wanted to develop other animators, and that was one of the things they had always wanted to do with Studio Ghibli. I think in that case it's kind of a success because they tried, but financially and the whole production of it was like a total disaster. But don't let all of that dissuade you from this film, because Ocean Waves is a very good kind of realistic high school drama in a lot of ways that, like, if you think of the 90s really were not well known for realistic high school dramas. They were known for very stylized high school dramas. So if you think of it in a genre within TV movies, it's actually quite remarkable. At the beginning, you're gonna not be as impressed with it. I was shocked at how much it made me think about myself at that time, and how people act as teenagers, and how you react to things, and how small your world is, and how important some of that stuff is. It's actually a very good 90s teen drama in a way that I think a lot of 90s teen dramas always left me unsatisfied. I always had this thing when I was a teenager in the 90s that none of these movies really reflected what my life was like as a teenager. But now, obviously, I'm not still a teenager and it's not still the 90s, but looking back on this is one of the few that I really felt kind of awkward and almost uncomfortable with, just like looking at a photo from my high school years. So if you have seen Ocean Waves or I Can Hear the Sea and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And check out my other Studio Ghibli reviews in my Studio Ghibli review playlist, and thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time.